It's actually categorized by gender. So the shame narrative for women is be perfect, look perfect, act perfect. The shame narrative for men is don't be weak.
Don't be weak. Wow.
Don't be weak. Think about how often in your life as a guy, you were conditioned, like, don't be weak, like, man up, get back in there.
Yeah.
Guys don't cry. Like, you big wussy with a different word, right? Like,
yeah. It can be brutal.
That's the shame narrative that men hear. Now, think about the problem we have in the military with suicide. It's predominantly male culture who are all embedded with this shame narrative of don't be weak. And then we say, get help. Like, get help implies you're not strong enough to handle it on your own, which is completely contrary to the shame message most men have been getting their entire lives. So how do we get more aware of the shame narrative that men have been hearing their entire lives as we also try to convince them it's not weak to get help, that it is strong to seek support, right? Like, we've got to get really clear on our messaging and leaders who can really understand why that is such a struggle for people, that competing narrative. Anyway, so that's what shame is. Shame resilience. And by the way, again, I want to give credit. This is all Brene Browns' work. And if you're interested in shame, she's got a great TED Talk out there on shame. The Power of Vulnerability TED Talk is certainly watched more, which tells you something about our culture, right? Like, we're terrified of digging into the shame, but the shame TED Talk is amazing. And so shame resilience is being able to notice shame, identify shame, reality checking the messages of that I'm not enough, and then actually naming it. So you said at the very beginning, like, oh, we don't really talk, like just we were just talking just now, like, we don't really talk about shame. Once I learned what shame resilience is, that I have to notice it, I have to identify it, I have to reality check it, and I have to name it, that is when I said I will start using the word whenever, like, it's the word and I'm going to use it. And if it's uncomfortable, I get it, it's uncomfortable. But if we don't get comfortable with naming it, we will never be able to get to the root cause that having shame leads us to.
Yeah, I love that I'm asking you this stuff too, because I'm learning right as we're talking now. Because like I've had horrible negative self-talk, like brutal. I almost didn't start this podcast. It's funny you use that as an example, because I had that negative self-talk. Like I listened to another